We're more than a month away, but I want to give some pointers and talking points and open up the discussion about Ohio State versus Michigan. So this is going to be an early look ahead for the game, and let me know what you think about this. I love to hear your thoughts. Michigan's won 4 straight. They're currently ranked 21st. Ohio State's ranked first. Michigan's either top 20 or top 15 in power ratings. Ohio State is either number 1 or number 2. This channel will make you a college football expert and help you enjoy watching games and make more accurate predictions. So what are you waiting for? Like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, comment your thoughts, and watch the video all the way through so that you can get the full package. And check the description and pinned comment for more ways to help yourself and this channel. Games at Michigan. Michigan has the streak, but Ohio State's the better team. And it's interesting. A lot of what I'm reading up about these teams and how their fans view them and how the college football public views them in this game will make this matchup one of the more intriguing ones in football, as it always is. Wasn't supposed to be that way last year, but it turned out to be. Close game. Was that way in 2023. They weren't close by the final scoreboard in 21 or 22, and it wasn't all that close in 2021, but they were highly anticipated matchups. Now, here we are. Is it November? Yes, November 4th. It's November 4th. And what I see in this game is a huge beam of confidence from the Ohio State side. Of course, there are some people saying that they're nervous about this game, and some are. There are also some saying they're nervous about this game as more of a cross your fingers or as more of a charm, like to not jinx the team. They're actually thinking that Ohio State will win big here, but they don't want to jinx it. You know, that stuff isn't real. It isn't. But there's a beam of confidence from the Ohio State side in not just the game, but in this season. Ohio State's the favorite to win it all, as they should be. They're the number 1 team in America. They are 8-0. They're 5-0. They have beaten Texas, Washington, Illinois, beat Penn State. No, Penn State's a dumpster fire, but still beat them. They're kind of on their revenge tour, in a way. You know, Jim Knowles, Washington, Texas. This team, whether or not they actually are or aren't, feels doubted, and the fan base does too. This is in large part a kind of revenge tour, which is, you know, kind of in one way funny and another way very understandable. They didn't go 12-0 last season. You'd like to do that. They didn't beat Michigan last year. You'd like to do that. And they've looked way better than Michigan. Honestly, they have the better passing offense. They have the better passing defense. They, I think, have the better rushing defense. Not quite as confident on that one, but would lean there. Michigan's special teams doesn't have the same advantage they did last year. Now, Michigan is the better rushing offense, but Ohio State overall, I would take them clearly at quarterback, receiver, probably tight end, though Michigan's impressed with its depth. I would take Ohio State definitely at corner, safety. I would take their starting 2 linebackers. With Michigan's linebackers fully healthy, I'd take their depth. D-line, I'd probably take Ohio State too, but I also don't know. When you have the linebackers and safeties they do, that can really help the defensive front. We saw this a bit last year with Ohio State too, where eventually their D-line got around that corner, but not really until the playoffs did they totally explode in the brightest moments, and Caleb Downs and Styles and Simon did a lot within that system. But I would take Ohio State at like 90% of the positions, honestly, and some positions on the offensive line too. Punter and kicker probably would pick Michigan, but it's not by the degree that it was last year. The beam of confidence is understandable. If you're a Michigan guy, it's quite terrifying. If you're an Ohio State guy, it's quite exhilarating, but maybe also terrifying a bit, because that beam of confidence for this game was also at the exact same level last year, and look what happened. And if you're Michigan, you don't have a beam of confidence, but one thing you have going for you is at least you are closer to Ohio State this year than last year. This year's Ohio State team, and I know I will catch flack for this, they are not the 2024 Buckeyes. You can pretend they are. Maybe they are. Maybe I'm totally off base, but I think the odds of that are very unlikely. Very unlikely. I think that Oregon, Penn State, and maybe even Indiana last year were all better than any team Ohio State's played so far this year. And while Ohio State has upgraded at some positions, certainly, they also have, how do I put this? They've regressed in the ground game. They've actually regressed in special teams efficiency. And as for the defense, I mean, analytically, it's better than it was last year. But Oregon, Indiana, and Penn State all had offenses last year that are better than the best offense that Ohio State's played this year. So I don't know. And that defense, I mean, remember, they pulverized Oregon in the Rose Bowl. They pulverized Texas. Outside of a late, like, kind of fluky fourth quarter comeback, they pulverized Notre Dame's offense. And I mean, and they also pulverized Indiana's. They pulverized Penn State. That was 5, like, really talented offenses that they pulverized. What really talented offense this year have they pulverized? And don't say Washington. Don't say Washington. And I'm saying this as someone who has Ohio State as the number 1 team. Don't say Washington, because Michigan held Washington to 7. And we know, I know, you know, Buckeye fan or Michigan fan, that Michigan's defense is not all that special. It is a good, maybe if coached correctly, great unit. It is not special. Washington's offense sucks at scaling with teams that have great defensive fronts, of which Michigan has, and Ohio State's is also that and probably better. They cannot, for the life of them, scale. Unless they somehow beat Oregon in an offensive fight, I am not going to deviate away from that. I've seen 2 games where they cannot, for the life of them, scale their offense and replicate its success against better defensive fronts. So if you're Michigan, you don't have a lot of confidence, and you shouldn't. I mean, that Purdue game was bad. But also, for Michigan, you have to accept the reality check that after last year and who you lost and where this team is, that you were never going to win it all this year. Your best chance was losing 2 of USC, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Michigan State or Washington, whichever one you want to make the 4th out of that series. Your best case scenario was you beat 3, but more likely than not 2. You lose at least 1. Definitely 2, especially since that's happened. And then you beat Ohio State in a close game. You reach the playoffs, you get killed in the playoffs, and then you build on next year. That would be a successful season for Michigan. They're in that position. Michigan's not confident at all, and I don't think they should be, based on their performances and the fact that, look, Ohio State's the better team. That's something I established pretty early on. But what you can hang your hat on is that you are better offensively than you were last year. You're not necessarily better than you were defensively either, but your secondary was not special last year. Your linebackers weren't either. And due to Ryan Day just being kind of an idiot, you were able to hold him to 10 points. Your offense, and specifically rushing offense, is much better than it was last year, even with Justice Haynes out. You have the QB run. Your running back Jordan Marshall's a lot like Khalil Mullings. Your offensive line is better. Your receivers are much better at blocking and better overall, even though they're still, pretty porous. You at least have the fact that you're at home and that this line will probably be 7.5 in favor of Ohio State at the best. It will not be 20.5. It won't be double digits like it was last year. Maybe it gets bet up to that, but I also don't know if that's going to be the case either. Because Michigan here has some cards that they could potentially pull to make this thing interesting. some of my early thoughts on matchups and how this game goes is the mental game. So who has the mental edge for 60 minutes is going to be critical. Michigan has had this for the past 4 years. And, people talk about, Ryan Day playing with house money. And I get that. And cliches are annoying and sometimes can be pretty stupid, but they also can have a sliver of truth. However, one thing I will fight back on that with is in what game has Ohio State's defense been tested? In what game have they been down and the momentum is against them enough to where it feels like their opponent is live and might even be favored to win? Alabama has faced that. Indiana has faced that. Michigan knows it because Michigan's got pulverized by USC and they lost to Oklahoma. But Ohio State, they have not faced that. And sometimes what can happen is if you're a team who is undefeated and you're humming along and you've been able to out-talent everyone, coach circles around everyone, you're able to beat up on everyone, and then one day you run into a brick wall and it's just hard to get up because it hurts and it's so painful that you flinch. Michigan has a chance to do that here. And that is mostly because of their rushing attack. If Ohio State had a rushing attack that I respected as one that could win them a title by its own, I would not even be making this video. I just tell you, Ohio State's winning. They're going to win by a big margin. But they don't have that. They've tried over and over again to get it going. And the best they have are a few long runs, typically later in the game, against inferior competition or defenses that are atrocious at stopping the run. Michigan not being one of those. So that segues into the lines of scrimmage. Whoever gets more TFLs, sacks, who stuffs the run, that's going to be huge here. The passing attack, obviously Ohio State's better there. But what I mean by the passing attack being a chess piece here is who puts it to better use. Because say Ohio State decides to do not what they did last year, but they decide they want to, they really want to like blow out Michigan. They don't just want to beat them, but they want to send a message, which has kind of been the theme with Ohio State every year since 2021. We don't just want to beat these guys, we want to pulverize them. And it pigeonholes their game plan. So similar to last year, but not as bad, not entirely. And it's either they're in obvious passing situations or they're, running the same concept. And what if Michigan uses their passing attack more methodically? I'm not a coaching expert, a play calling expert, don't pretend to be. So I'm not going to go in the weeds there. I can't, I'm incapable of. But you all can probably get what I'm saying. If Michigan's maybe more creative there, if Michigan keeps mixing it up, and maybe Ohio State's like run on every first down, sometimes second down, we're always passing on long downs. That type of thing. Coverage and tackling. You got to clean up things if you're the secondary. You have to tackle, and you have to cover well. Bless me. Especially the case with Michigan, going up against these receivers. Especially the case with them. But also I want to emphasize it with Ohio State too. Not to the same degree, their secondary is better. They have not... It depends on what version of Bryce Underwood shows up. Outside of the Washington game, of which Michigan's offensive line and pass protection is way better than Washington's, and their defense is better. Outside of that game, Ohio State, if the Bryce Underwood of 50% of the year, 75% of the year shows up, this will be the second toughest passing attack they've played, which is hilarious given they played Texas and Arch Manning and Penn State, and I know they didn't play Drew Aller, but they were supposed to preseason. I never thought I'd be saying that. It's not because Michigan's pass offense is good. It's because Manning sucked initially. Now he's getting things together. And Ethan Grunkmeyer and those receivers just... That passing offense is not what I thought it was preseason. And then last but not least is the balanced offense. This kind of circles back to who utilizes the passing attack better. but who's more creative, who executes better, who wins the little things. If we're talking about who wins the big things, it's going to be Ohio State, because Ohio State's better and their capacity to be explosive on offense and defense is greater than Michigan's. But what about the little things? Who does the little things better? And that is going to be a big piece in this game. Ohio State should win. I've been on record saying Ohio State will win, despite picking Michigan preseason. However, big however, I also thought that Ohio State preseason would be significantly better than Michigan. Same thing exists here. Ohio State's done a better job in a lot of different areas than I thought they would preseason. Michigan has been about the same. They're better at linebacker than I thought, worse on D-line, better on O-line, a little bit worse at quarterback, and worse at special teams. What's interesting to me is the confidence factor in the Buckeyes here. No one, and I mean no one, is going to pick Michigan to win this thing. Unless Ohio State loses to someone in the next 3 games and Michigan beats Maryland and Northwestern by an average of 50 points. It's not going to happen. So with Ohio State, you're not going to get the benefit of people doubting you here. Maybe you can generate that in the locker room, but Michigan will probably be able to match that with everyone picking against them here. This is going to require Ohio State playing their A game and having the humility and mental fortitude combined to go through 4 quarters and come out with a win. Based on who Ohio State is, they are not 2019 Ohio State. And Michigan is, if they won last year, they can find a way to win this year. They're better than they were last year. The point I'm trying to make is Ohio State can't play arrogantly and win. I swear, and I'm a Michigan guy, but I swear if Day comes out and decides to be like we're gonna hang 100 on you, which has been the mentality of most games against Michigan, especially in Ohio Stadium. If he does that, I do not want to hear. I do not want to hear anything anything about Michigan. Don't want to. I just don't. And the reason I say that is, last year was supposed to be the reckoning. The year before was supposed to be the reckoning. And I know that Ohio State's playing with house money, but there's also the reality that with the way that Ohio State's treated this game and the way that I think a lot of Ohio State brass, boosters, and people view this game, that a lot of people think that the natural order of things is Michigan being Ohio State's body pillow. And we're seeing that slowly begin to creep back in as Ohio State looks phenomenal and as Michigan, beats Purdue by 5 points. This game is going to determine who goes to Indy. Ohio State's schedule gets, from a Big Ten conference standpoint, just kind of gets weaker and weaker. Michigan has at least played not just Washington, but USC, Nebraska, Northwestern's won some games. Maryland might, trip up and find a win here or there. And Oregon's schedule is, from a Big Ten combined win percentage standpoint, is tougher than both these. So if Michigan wins here, they're probably going to Indy, or they don't, but Oregon goes, and Ohio State sits at home. If Ohio State wins, well, they obviously go to Indy. They'll be 12-0, and they will be guaranteed a first-round bye. If they lose to Michigan, I actually think there's a chance they'll be guaranteed a first-round bye too. Just going from number 1 to number 5, I think is it's a pretty drastic change. And if Ohio State loses this game, they will still have a much better chance of winning it all than Michigan. I will still rank them ahead of Michigan, rate them ahead of Michigan by quite a significant margin. Again, I think Ohio State probably should win, but be careful. out there. Very early read on this is that Ohio State should win, but there's almost too much juice going Ohio State's way. A lot is being made up about this team being better than last year's team. It could be. I don't think it is. A lot is being made up about how Michigan didn't even improve at all from last year. And they're at home. Ohio State's on the road. A lot's being made up of how, like, I've heard this, you've heard this if you follow Twitter, that Ohio State's the next dynasty. And that type of stuff, given the recent history of this game, can be detrimental. Like, if I were Ohio State, I'd calm down about some of that stuff. And if I were Michigan, I'd be hoping that that continues. For purely the football stuff, which is hard to account for because this rivalry is that intense. Like, Michigan in 18, from the metrics entering that game, should have won and covered, but they got destroyed. From the football side of things, Ohio State should win. It should be their game. But the one edge Michigan has on the football side of things will be the ground game. If Ohio State makes this about their ground game, if they do, if they make it that, Michigan will win. If this is a game about running the ball and stopping the run combined, Michigan will win. Ohio State does not have the backs. I know Michigan, Haynes is out, but Marshall's much better at seeking contact and pulling players away. And Michigan's run blocking O-line is better. Pass blocking, it's not better than Ohio State's. If Ohio State makes this a game about the air, they should win, and perhaps by a comfortable margin. But again, I also don't know. Like, what's the weather going to be like? What is Michigan's pass rush like? I mean, Michigan, there's a good chance they put on the best pass rush performance of anyone Ohio State's played all season long. What version of Underwood shows up? If it's the version that we saw against like Washington, for example, then Michigan's offense, based on some things that I've seen, should be able to score enough points to push this defense a bit. It should be Ohio State's game. I'm going to mention that over and over again, but it's an early read. I still think there's a pretty good chance that Michigan pulls it off here. Those are my thoughts on the game as of November 4th. Thank you for watching. It's my mission on College Football with Sam to make you the most informed, knowledgeable, and entertained fan as possible. We aren't perfect, but we hit the nail on the head more often than we hit our thumb with the hammer. Make sure to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, comment, and if you're here, you've probably already watched the whole video. So thank you for doing those things.